Cottage Garden is the first game in the puzzle trilogy by Uwe Rosenberg, but it also happens to be the third one, the last one that I played after Indian Summer and Spring Meadow. Because life is just crazy that way. I don't know how it happened. So Cottage Garden is another puzzle game that has similarities with, well, other puzzle games, with Tetris, just because you will be combining pieces of different shapes, trying to fill in different areas. And it plays differently from its other two siblings, although when I start showing to you, you're definitely gonna see some similarities. Like its other siblings in the same line, it is a game that is very simple, very accessible. You can play it with children, you can play with adults, because, well, puzzles are just interesting and really they're transgenerational. As long as there's a little bit of challenge, adults and children can be equally excited and interested. Without further ado, let me show you how the game works. This is how the game may look like at setup, and you may see similarities with other games in the puzzle trilogy by Rosenberg, such as the board that you also have in Spring Meadow, or the path of tiles like you have in Indian Summer. Here, each player will have two flower beds. The point will be to use the tiles to complete the flower beds. Each time you complete a flower bed, you score it, then you discard it, and there will be a neutral flower bed somewhere around where player can get access to it. When you score a tile, you replace it with the one in the public area, and that will be taken by someone else when they score the tile. Each tile has a light side and a dark side, and you always have a dark side and a light side up. So when you score a tile and you replace it, you place it in the with the side up that you need to have a dark and a light one. Also, you have a scoring track here. When you score, you will move these cubes on these two tracks and you try to get them as high as possible to score as many points as possible. Now, also we have here the board where the places that are the pieces that are currently available are. There is a die here representing the gardener. When it is your turn, you can take a piece only from the row that the gardener is facing. After your turn, the gardener will move to the next row, and so the next player will have a different selection. And of course, then when he turns around the corner, also the selection will change. If at the beginning of a turn there is the gardener enters a row which is completely empty, only has one tile, then you draw tiles from here, from this path here, starting from the wheelbarrow, and you continue like this. Also, when you score flower beds, there will be new pieces available, and you put them at the end of the path, continuing the path, so the people can see which pieces will be available, next. Also, instead of taking a tile from this board, you may decide to take a flower pot instead. Flower pots are very usable game pieces because you can use them just to fill a single square on one of your flower beds, and they will score you points. There's also another game piece, which is the cat. There are different types of cats, all adorable in their own way, and they also allow you to fill in those annoying little pesky squares that fall between puzzle pieces you can fill otherwise, but they, differently from flower pots, they do not score you points. Also, these are garden cloches, and we'll talk about those. I thought they were little lakes, and that's what I told my daughter when we played the game, and I cannot reveal the truth to her, or she'll be heartbroken. Now, when you get a new game piece, a new puzzle piece, you place in one of the two flower beds, Tetris style. Don't do silly stuff like don't follow the grid or put one on top of another. I mean, do we really need to explain? I would say put in such a way that does not look stupid. So follow the grid and don't overlap tiles with one another. Something important though, you can, if you so desire, cover the flower pots and the cloches that are printed on the board. It's not the best thing because those you need to score, but this is what you have to do. By the way, we're talking about the die that advances. You continue like this, taking pieces, scoring flower beds. Each time that the garden die goes around, it goes up by 1 level. Is level the right word? Well, you turn the die to the next value. When it gets to 6, that triggers the final round, in which players need to complete their flower bed as fast as possible, because basically during the final round, each turn that you're taking, that you're still in the game, you lose 2 points. So that simply encourages you to complete and remove your flower beds. In the final round, when you complete a flower bed, you remove it and you don't get to replace it. So the game continues until all players are out of flower beds, and at the point the player with the highest total is the winner of the game. Now, a couple of things about scoring. As we said, you will form your little nice cute puzzle until the whole thing is full, and that's why it's very useful and very important. Again, remember, you can take flower pots or use cats. We'll see how you earn them. You start with some cats at the beginning of the game, and you'll get more as the game progresses. And here we go. Suppose that this is my flower bed. The flower bed is complete. Now, usually, in general, each garden cloche is worth 2 points, and each flower pot showing in your completed flower bed is worth 1 point. Each cloche 2, each flower pot 1. But there are a couple of things. Not all numbers are born equal in this game. To record the points that you scored, you move the corresponding cubes on the board. That is, each time that you score, you move 1 cube and 1 cube only for how many points, for how many flower pots you scored, and for how many water cloches you had. Say, in this case, I'm scoring that flower bed there, and I have 1, 2, 3 flower pots, so I can move 1 and only 1 cube by 3 spaces. 1, 2, 3. Suppose that actually this is the situation when I'm scoring that, I could choose to move this one by 3, or I can choose to start another one by 3. And you're thinking, 3 is always 6. Again, what is the point? Again, because this track has several interesting elements. When a cube goes past that line, you immediately get a free cat. Not useless. So you may wanna exploit that. The first time that a cube reaches the end, the first player to place a cube at the end of a track gets this token here, which is worth 2 victory points at the end of the game. Second player to place a cube at the end of one of the tracks will get this the token here, which is worth 1 victory point at the end of the game. Also, if you look carefully, the water cloche cubes, the ones that are moved by the water cloche, is worth 2 points each. But most importantly, there is a gap. There is a gap between the second to last and the last space on the scoring track. In fact, here it goes from 15 to 20, and here it goes from 14 to 20. So moving from here to here or from here to here is not the same as getting that final jump. This is also useful because otherwise the final jump may be wasteful. If you're here and you have a place and you have a flower bed with 3 water cloches, well, 1 will be lost, but at least those extra points make up for it. But still, ideally, you're trying to exploit the structure of the scoring track by ideally, well, getting just and exactly how many water cloches and or flower pots you need to get exactly there and to maximize your use of the track. Also, when all 3 of the orange cubes have left their original space, you get a flower pot that you get to place in one of your flower beds immediately, which is also another sweet little bonus. So manipulating what you score, how you score, and which cube you move is not immaterial. Actually, it is a big part of the game. I wouldn't say it's as big as the puzzle, but definitely it is something you need to take into account if you want to be able to score effectively. Continue like this until the end of the game, and at the point the player with the highest total is the winner of the game. I like Cottage Garden. I find it a strong design, very nice components, clear rules, concepts that travel across these games, and also make them easier to learn. Once you know one, there will be certain things that you will find familiar in the other one. And mind you, the game would be easy enough to learn even without those. It's just an added bonus that actually, oh yeah, I've seen this, how it works. I really like the grid that you have in Spring Meadow, that you have here too, because it adds that element of multiplayer, non-solo, of interaction, in which in fact I get a sense of what you may want, and so I get a sense of what I may be able to manipulate to take away from you. Of course, I'm also trying not to get stuck with pieces that will be problematic for me, that will force me to waste turns getting flower pots, because I have all of these like one little areas that I can fill in with the pieces. So I'm trying to find the balance between taking away stuff from you that you may need and taking stuff that actually I also need. So to me, the puzzle element is impeccable. It's fun to look around and find for the right pieces and imagine, turn them around in your mind. I like the flexibility that you have of having 2 flower beds, and so that if you get stuck in one, maybe you're going to start working on the other. In fact, my impression is that it's a good idea to put emphasis on one and try to get that one done right, and if you can, then you start working on the other one, because if you have 2 of them almost full, and then the pieces just don't work in either, then you have nowhere to run. There is no plan B there. So I like, again, the challenge of working and the flexibility of working with 2 flower beds. One thing that felt counterintuitive, I had a hard time wrapping my mind around it at the beginning, is that you don't really score the game pieces that you put on the board. You score the things in between them. You score the quote-unquote the empty spaces. It may seem like incredible petty pet peeve, but it's just weird to me. In Spring Meadow, I'm forming lines with the game pieces. Like in Tetris, I'm scoring those parts that I'm filling in. In Indian Summer, I win if in fact I fill up my area entirely before anybody else does. Here I'm getting these pieces to represent different areas with flowers, but then I'm scoring the areas that don't have flowers. I'm scoring the cloches and the flower pots. I don't know, it just feels a little anticlimactic or counterintuitive that I'm putting all those flowers there to score something else, just to get down with the flower bed, to get it out of the way, and actually what scores is the flower point. It's a weird thing. Maybe you ever like, oh yes, Marco finally understands me. I thought I was crazy. In my group, everybody thinks I'm a weirdo. You and I, if we are weirdos, there's 2 of us out there, so it's fine. But in general, that being said, it works. That being said, it works. And actually, I really like, although again, that was counterintuitive at the beginning, but then I got to like it. There is the scoring system that really, again, took some getting used to. I wouldn't say it almost makes the game into 2 mini games, but it has a little bit of that racing element, almost like it's a mini race game fueled by the puzzle. And although the 2 are really separate, yet somehow the synergy between the 2 helped to smoothen the transition. I didn't feel that the 2 elements of the game were too foreign from one another. So in general, we have another puzzle game that I would say is smaller scale. Although you have 2 flower beds, each flower bed is pretty small. So also because of that, the game feels, from that point of view, quote unquote, more casual. There is less tension. Yes, if a flower bed is not perfect, it will not score a lot, but then I'll be done with that. As opposed to in Spring Meadow, there are deeper decisions, because if you mess up in an area, then it's gonna take you a while before you can recover, and there's only that area, that board that you're scoring. So if you mess up there, you have to deal with it, and then may have a longer effect. There may be a larger larger set of repercussions on, say, a mistake. This game, Cottage Garden, is more forgiving in that sense, because a flower bed is not great. Fine, I'm gonna get another one and start over. So in general, I like Cottage Garden. It seems to me the lightest of the entire trilogy. I guess it makes sense if you play it first, if it came out first, so that people could get used to the idea. In general, it is a fun game. Other players that prefer, again, a tougher intellectual challenge will probably prefer Spring Meadow. Players that are more on the Euro side of things may prefer Indian Summer, because there is a system of resources that reminded me a little bit of a Euro game. Cottage Garden is the simplest. I wouldn't say it's the most linear, because it still has its own cogs that move around and add complexity and detail. Somehow it is the one that feels the lightest of them all, and I had fun playing it. Again, it may be too light for somebody, and that is pretty much my only caveat, but in general I definitely enjoy playing Cottage Garden.